G'day guys, what's cracking? It's Ralph here, and today I have discovered that I forgot to plug in my microphone. Yeah, so this is the second vlog of the day, and it's actually the third vlog of this particular location because last time I vlogged here I lost all the footage afterwards. So we're back again. This is Fingal Headland, and so this is, I'm standing on the headland. Around here is the point of Fingal Headland, which is, there's this external sort of isolated tiny little island with a walkthrough that you can go and stand on at the risk of your life, and it's all tessellated rocks. And then the tessellated rocks all spill down here on the headland. They go round the corner, and then we have the beach, Fingal Beach, just over there, which you can see in the background. As the coastline goes round, it undulates in its pattern, and as a result, as the waves come in, they bounce off the cliff face, and then they go back out. And as they go back out, they hit the oncoming waves, and it has these beautiful spouts of water, these beautiful crests of water. The reason why the waves are so good in just this particular spot is because there's a tiny outcropping of tessellated rocks, and what that does is it changes the way the water then responds back into the oncoming wave. So the backwash hits the wave, but because there's a shorter distance for that initial wave to travel, it comes with a bit more velocity and a bit more power, creating more interest and drama here than say up here where we usually shoot Fingal Headland. My original plan today was to shoot an epic sunrise with some wave cresting in the foreground, because I'm tired of just boring sunsets where you just see the sea and a nice sky and you're like, where's the technique and the skill and the creativity in that? So I'm challenging myself today. The problem is the sky is not turning it on. Have a look at this. This is golden hour, guys. There's no gold. Where is the gold? So what I'm going to do is use the sky as kind of a backdrop, and then I'm going to layer. So I want to create dimensions as well as drama and dimensions. And so what I'm going to do is use this beautiful foreground here. See the tessellated rocks intertwined with the bright green grass. Lovely. With these epic waves that are just going off. Let's have a look at the epic light that we're getting now. The sun is just carving through the clouds. The waves are in front, they're doing their thing. I have framed my shot up where the pandanus tree is kind of hugging in the sunrise, the beautiful tessellated grasses, rocks and grasses, they kind of intermingle, and the epic waves that are just barreling in now, and there's this golden sheen of the water. It just looks mint, just mint. When you're exposing for shots like this, you've got two options the way I see it. You can centrally expose, so expose to capture the best of the shadows and the best of the highlights, so the best of the bright stuff, the best of the dark stuff, at exactly the same time in a single shot. You will have reduced quality, but if you don't have the skill in Photoshop, then that is a really good way to approach that. So what I would do is I would expose in the middle and then slightly overexpose from that point. The reason being, when you edit later on, you can get much more out of your shadows than you can out of your highlights. So if you lose your highlights, if your highlights are too white, you will never get them back. But if your shadows are too dark, you often can redeem them. There's only a certain window or span into which you can redeem them before they get too noisy and it just looks rubbish. You get greater span with shadows than you do with highlights. The other way to do it is to multi-expose and then lay them together. So you expose your shot based on the darkest point and you expose that correctly, and then you go to the second. So in this instance, I would choose the rocks in front of me that are really quite dark. I would expose for them and this tree, and then I would expose for the sea, and then I would expose for the sky, and then I would combine those photographs later on in Photoshop. Now I'm using this pandanus tree, to create a little bit of sort of framing and excitement and interest. Got my 14 to 24 on. Super wide, but it doesn't fisheye. That's what we like from a lens, and that's enabling me to capture the foreground and the midground and the background. When you're choosing a focal length, here's what's fascinating: the focal length You think, oh, I'll go wider to include more in, which is why you use a wide angle. But as you go wider, everything in the frame gets smaller. Now, that's pretty obvious, right? But the challenge with that is what you are captured by with your naked eye, where you're like, that's incredible. When you go too wide, it loses its impact. And so you actually want to shoot as narrow a focal length as you possibly can to preserve the composition that you want that makes the drama look epic. And that requires moving around, rethinking, and changing. So here's a few of the shots that I've taken down here, just as we've been, as I've been waiting for some of the sun to get up. As I've sat here this morning and just watched this beautiful scene unfold, the waves have got bigger and bigger, and the crests that they created become bigger and bigger. And so we're in this race at the moment, and the race is about shutter speed. It's about using the right shutter speed. I'm using a fast shutter speed because I want to capture and just freeze the action. So at the moment it's 1/640, but also as the sun comes up, that means you are forced into a higher shutter speed, and you might want some motion blur. You might want to just use the beauty of what's taking place to capture some motion blur as it happened. In fact, I'm going to do that now and put up a shot. This is what it looks like to capture some of that motion blur. See, the motion blur actually looks more muddy than it does epic, I reckon, unless you went super motion blur, but you would have to do that, put a filter on the lens, and I can't put a filter on this lens. Oh, the sun's just come through, guys. All right, I'm just going to do this, hang on. Watch me deep in thought as I try and work this one out. So the sun's come through, what that does is it backlights the waves, which just look beautiful. But the other thing it does, which is more of a challenge, is it creates like really bright. And as soon as you expose for the brightness, you actually kill all of the shadows, and it makes the image just completely blown out and not really pretty. So you're balancing these things, and don't be afraid to use your ISO to balance them out. You want to pick your aperture. So if you want a sunburst, you need an aperture of around 18. You might even go to 20. And if you're going to do that, it's going to affect your shutter speed. So if you want a shutter speed that's a fast shutter speed, you've only got ISO to move that around. So don't be afraid to do that. Like, you can shoot in 1000 ISO, and you're not going to have the muddiest image or the blurriest, the noisiest image ever. So I'd encourage you to have a play. You'll get to know what your camera is capable of doing, but also you'll get to see what you're comfortable with and what look that you want from those shots. Have a look at my face. Like, you don't have to look at my face, sorry, but it's just the sun is now up. It is cracking. The water looks just aquary blue. It looks perfect, and I'm nestled into 1/200th f-stop of 9 and an ISO of 125, which just feels like it's the sweet spot for this particular thing. And I'm going to put up a raw photo. So this is just the raw photo, unedited, to show you what I mean. That's what you want. You want the closest to perfect you can possibly get in camera, so that when you put it in post, you can make it perfect. And perfect is what our eyes see when we're here, right? Like, so you see something like that's outstanding. I want that. So that's what we're after when we're in post. We're trying to recreate what we experienced and saw when we're there in the flesh. What you're looking at now is the shot I've been composing all morning to get a banger, and I've just put it over a video, and I'm just going to film some of it because I want to talk to you about how this thing works. So what happens is waves come in sets, and you might get a set of 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. No two waves are exactly the same. They're a different height, a different width, and a different power. And that creates a different result every time. When two of those different results clash at different directions, you get these amazing spouts. When the sun backlights that, you get these amazing aqua colors and yellows and almost oranges and just epic yumminess. It's so good, which is what you're seeing at the moment. Now what happens is you might get these sets come in, so these sets roll in and they hit the cliff that you can see there, and then they push back out, and depending on the space in between the waves, so the space in between, not the sets but the waves, depends on what sort of results you get. So sometimes the space is really narrow and you get a splash much closer to the cliff, and sometimes you get one that's further out like this one. Just looks glorious, and other times you just get a mess, and sometimes you get nothing because the wave's not quite at the right peak to be smashed by its incoming counterpart. So you have all these things to take into consideration, which changes the way you compose your shot. It's a waiting game and you're chasing the light, and so sometimes the light gets too bright. Once that sun gets too high, it's gonna just look flat and rubbish and a waste of time. But until that happens, we have this opportunity to muck about with our settings and get exactly the right shot. So having said that and walked you through basically all I can walk you through today, guys, I'm going to show you my final shot. I'm proud of this shot. I'm really stoked by how it came out. I think I achieved what I wanted to achieve this morning. Thanks for coming along and watching. I'd encourage you to go down to your local coastline if you're near a coastline, or when you're on holidays near a coastline, and scope it out, find where the rocks are, the points are, see how the surf comes in, watch for a while and work out where that location is, and then go to it and enjoy. Get some bangers and tag me on Insta. Let's do it. Let's revive Instagram. Thanks heaps for watching, everyone. Hope you've really enjoyed some of the footage and hopefully some of the tips from this video. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see ya in the next video. Bye.